And we're back with the Costello Coaching Podcast. I'm Tommy Costello with our man, Andrew Rohrbach. Today, we're going to be talking about the trans-theoretical process.
Model.
Two different things. But what we're going to do is we're going to take this concept that is in psychology and we're going to apply it to athletes. So I'll let Andrew do the educating on what this is. But essentially, in my view, in short term, it goes from being unaware, becoming aware, taking some action, and then doing your best to maintain the action that you took. And so this can be really applicable for an athlete in any stage, whether it come to their psychology or it come to their physical well-being, anything that has to do with performance. We have to understand where we're at and how we're going to get better at that. So this model helps us really create some space and understand how we can make some change.
Perfect. Well, I want to say this. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Awesome. So this is a trans-theoretical model. Best way we could describe this, just for people so they don't have to go walk around going, I know the trans-theoretical model or the TTM. It's the stages of change model. So there's 6 different stages of change, and I'll go through those. Sound good?
The TTM?
The TTM. First stage is the pre-contemplation stage. Basically, what this is illustrating is when you're in the pre-contemplation phase, Tommy, you don't even acknowledge that you have a problem. You don't even know that you might want to change, that there is possibility of changing. You're kind of in the dark a little bit. Okay, so when you're in this, it's really hard to help someone who's in this phase. But we can help them by being empathetic of their situation, where they're at, being supportive, encouraging, and we can let them know that their behavior is kind of affecting, them getting results.
So if that's good for a coach or someone in our role that's there to help someone, an outsider can be aware that someone has a problem. And sometimes the person with the problem can be unaware that they have a problem. I think of someone maybe addicted to cigarettes or someone that is an alcoholic. They don't they don't think of themselves as an alcoholic, but they really are one. And maybe if you're a spouse or if you're a friend, you say, man, that person really has a problem with alcohol. And it's their job to kind of bring it to light to help them to move towards that contemplation stage. Want to stop you here, though, and ask you, do you have any tips where someone could maybe become aware of if they have problems or not?
If someone's not aware that they have a problem, I think it's going to be really hard for themselves to see if they have a problem or not. Sure. So like you said right there, if there's someone in your life, a family, a friend, or a confidant that can assess that you're actually having a problem, the best way you could do this, Tommy, is you could offer information. You can assess that their ways of behavior are causing problems. That's the best way to do it, in my opinion.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. So from that pre-contemplation phase, we've kind of illustrated that. The second one is contemplation phase. And in this phase, they start to acknowledge that there is possibly a problem and that maybe they're going to do something about it or maybe they're going to change, but they're still kind of in this wishy-washy area of it. So you've probably assessed, hey, buddy, you got a problem. You should probably stop smoking cigarettes. They might be in this phase of, okay, yeah, I smoke cigarettes, but I'm going to keep doing it. But I also know that it's not that great, so maybe my health is starting to become affected by it. So that's kind of the phase that contemplation is. And from that, it's this concept of decisional balance is really, really helpful, which is basically helping them illustrate that there's pros and cons to their behavior, right? So you can make a pros and cons list at this time. Hey, smoking cigarettes, what are the benefits of this and what are the negative side effects of doing that? And that kind of can help them stay from contemplation to the next phase, right, which is preparation stage. You have any comments on that?
The contemplation?
Yeah.
I think if we were to put it in the framework of an athlete, you'd identify first I want to start in pre-contemplation where they don't understand that they have a problem. So for an athlete, what I would do, or for really anyone that wants to achieve at a high level, I'd say, what is your vision for yourself in this context? What are you trying to achieve? Like, what are you here for? What are you trying to get better at? And they say, I want to play in the MLB. Okay, great. Or I want to play Division I sports. Great. Are you aware that you aren't strong enough to actually do that? No, I feel strong. I feel good. Well, how strong are you? And a lot of times, I've talked about on this podcast before, objective versus subjective. We can provide objective data to bring someone aware of where they're actually deficient, of where their problem lies. So then this paints a real clear picture. Then what happens is that athlete goes into the contemplation stage. And that's where we would, you've talked about creating a T-chart and understanding pros and cons of, okay, if I train this hard, maybe the con is that I'm fatigued. Or if I do this kind of work, maybe if I gain velocity, I'm actually in more jeopardy of injury. So we kind of become aware of what you're actually signing up for. Or the fact is the work that it's going to be required to achieve at that level is going to be a big sacrifice of time. And, a lot of the times, people actually sacrifice what they want. People sacrifice what they want because they're not willing to make the sacrifice. Does that make sense?
No, say it again.
Okay, so if you're a high school kid and you want to hang out with your friends and you want to go to the parties and you want to do all the things that you really don't have time to do in order to achieve your goal, so if you want to achieve the goal of being a Division I athlete, and you'd have to sacrifice maybe some of the things that normal high school kids that would get to do in order to achieve that. So if you aren't willing to sacrifice going to the parties, hanging out with your friends, doing leisure activities, then the sacrifice will become Division I sports.
Right.
And so that kind of conversation is in the contemplation stage.
I see what you're saying. Could be pre-contemplation as well as contemplation if you're not really acknowledging that is a problem. But like you're addressing, if you're in the contemplation phase, you're starting to kind of weigh the benefits of all right, do I even want to make this change? And if you're in that spot, you definitely have some awareness of, if I'm going to parties instead of training, what's going to happen from that situation?
You're not going to achieve what you want.
Right, exactly. So the next stage that we go through is the preparation stage. And this is when you really start talking to people. You start getting advice of, all right, I'm acknowledging that I have a little bit of a problem here and I want to make a change. I'm going to talk to the right people, right? You start doing some research and you start working, maybe with a personal trainer or a therapist or a coach like yourself at this stage, right? And so eventually in this stage, we talked about in the contemplation stage, you can maybe make a T-chart of pros and cons. That can be a little early in that stage, but it is possible. But definitely in the preparation stage, definitely you want to go through a pros and cons list. Within this, all right, if I don't change, if I stay the way I'm staying, what's going to happen? Versus the opposite of that, right? So you can create what we've talked about and you've talked about in your book, SMART goals. Specific, measurable, attainable, reachable.
Time-bound.
There you go. Right? So you can create some of those. And
good plug on the book, by the way.
It's a good book.
Developing the human within the
athlete. We like
good.
to say it together at the same time. It's part
Very
of our
good.
thing.
Very good.
So if you create these SMART goals, that's going to allow you to get closer to your action stage, which is the next stage. But do you have any comments on the preparation stage on how you maybe would coach somebody through that?
For me, most people show up in the preparation stage. They've either been identified as a coach, like, hey, you have a problem. And they're like, what do you mean I have a problem? And they start to discern, how do I fix that problem? You go work with this guy. You don't throw hard enough. You need to go throw with Tommy. You need to go train with Tommy. Okay. So they kind of show up in this stage. Now, in this stage, what happens a lot of the time is I like to see commitment level. So I give it about 90 days to see if someone's really bought in on making the change. And I would consider that the preparation. So 90 days, are they consistent in their work? Are they starting to make progress? Have they made the adjustments maybe in their diet that they needed to make? Or have they made the adjustments in their schedule to make the change? And for me, that's that preparation stage where we have enough time to really understand if someone is willing to take that next step. And that's where I feel like the preparation stage falls for me.
So you're saying the preparation stage falls in still some sort of action?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's not yet action for me unless it's become a commitment. And I would say that the 90 days is that initial, yes, I'm willing to make the commitment. All right, prove it for 90 days. Rather than, yeah, I'm ready to make the commitment. And then day one, you go, oh, he's committed.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying. That with the preparation stage, there could be some form of action. I'm hearing your point with it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. With the literature, it does suggest that preparation's more so kind of like maybe like an initial intake meeting of some sort, of sitting down with you and going, all right, this is kind of where I want to go. This is the direction I'm trying to go. Mm-hmm. Can you help me get there? And how do I have to get there?
Yeah.
Right. And then that brings to the next action phase, which is kind of what you're talking about. But you can put those two together, especially if that's your metric.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think for me too, like people come in on the first day and we always have a conversation. It's never, all right, show up, warm up. It's always a conversation. And some people are honestly caught off guard by that. But I don't have enough time in my day to spend it with people who aren't committed. So if we have a conversation and someone isn't committed to the process of what it's going to take, that's fine. Like I'm not the person for you. And we have to have a dialogue and an honest conversation that you want to do this, that I want to be invested in your life. I want to be a part of your life. And I need to help. I want to help you. But in order for me to do that, I need to know, are you in? Are you in? And so we'll have that conversation first, and then we'll go out on the floor and I'll kind of assess in that preparation stage where their physical body is. And then over the 90 days, I can kind of see if they've made that progress, and then the action steps proceed following. So I know it's a little outside of the context of maybe this model or the literature, but that's the way my brain thinks on it.
Yeah, respectively, that makes sense. With that preparation phase, once you've completed that, you've come up with your SMART goals, you get to this next stage of action phase. And action phase is when you take your goals, when you take all the stuff that you've been possibly working with your coach on developing to get yourself to that next phase. So you can use that as an example with a pitcher. We'll go through that eventually, but you'll take your actions and you'll take all those actions and the goals that you've created with that, and you'll start putting them into play, right? And this stage, it's really, really important. Okay, it's real important to understand when you're in action phase, it's okay to have setbacks. It's okay to have setbacks. It's actually something that this model talks about really, really deeply, is that all these stages are pretty interchangeable. Mm-hmm. You can go from action phase to the next phase, to this phase, up and down and left and right? So
what about this pre-contemplation? Like, can you even fall back into that?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or you're unaware that the problem is back?
Yeah, because here's the thought. You start at pre-contemplation phase for one specific goal.
Oh, okay. Then you have another
goal at that end of that phase. If you've created that, there's also another thing, right? This is called like leveling up, technically within the psychological game, right? So if you're going to train somebody and they're 8 years old, there's going to be different goals there. And if they stay with you till they're 11 years old, there's different goals there, right? Different movement patterns, different types of compound lifts that you want to add into it, different types of mechanical things that you might not be able to address with an 8-year-old, right? So you're going to constantly go back and forth between these phases, and that's okay. So in action phase, be okay if you have some sort of setbacks, but that's why it's important during the preparation phase that you've developed how you get there, who's going to be involved in it, the kind of coaching you possibly need, the systems there, so that when you're in the action phase, you're not going, I didn't achieve this, and I'm not even close, and set yourself back all the way to pre-contemplation. Does that make sense?
Totally.
So you have any comments on that and how you train action phase, or do you want me to go right to the maintenance stage?
Action stage is maybe beyond that 90-day scope or within it, kind of like basically we need to establish that there's a commitment level to it and that you're bought into the process. And something that you kind of brought up the 8, 9, 11-year-old thing. The way that I like to think about it is my goal for all the athletes that I train, if they want to be professional, is I want to get them to the last window of trainability. So Dr. Tom House talks about from 9 to 14 is the first window of trainability. That's where you're working on neurological development and fundamental flexibility. 14 to 19 is the first window where you should be focused on strength. So you're just getting stronger, literally from 14 to 19. Then you roll into college. Maybe you're a sophomore in college. 19 to 26 is that third window of trainability. You have now entered the window of trainability that is focused on skill acquisition. So you're actually getting good at a fastball on the glove side, a curveball, a changeup, or hitting the ball to all sides of the field. Then 26 to 35 and 35 and beyond, if you're fortunate enough to play that at that age, is about retaining fast twitch muscle fibers. So the retention of fast twitch. So you can think of a Tom Brady that's doing a bunch of banded exercises for speed. Okay, that is someone that is in the last window of trainability trying to maintain his fast twitch as long as possible to keep him in that level. But it doesn't mean that he isn't still working on neurological development and fundamental flexibility. It doesn't mean that he still isn't working on strength building. It doesn't mean that he isn't working on skill acquisition. He is working on all those things, and then he's actually working on skill retention. So skill retention, fast twitch muscle fibers, 26 to 35. And that is a perfect kind of layout for someone. And so when I talk to the athlete, I say, hey, my goal is to get you to the last window of trainability. So can you be bought in on the fact that you're actually 13 years old, buddy, and we're focused on making sure that you know where to be, when to be there, how to play the game, how to develop your habits and routines, and make sure that your shoulders are stable, you're strong enough so that you don't put yourself, that you're in jeopardy of getting hurt. Okay, let's stay focused on that, guys. Let's not be worried about what trophy we're winning at 13 years old, because we're not even in skill acquisition. Let's worry about a trophy in Omaha or in the World Series in professional baseball. Let's worry about trophies there, because that's the window you're in. And so really, that's like my model that I work within. But it falls into this of helping someone become aware that it isn't about the 13-year-old trophy.
Right. And what you're talking about, categories. You're putting people in these different types of categories of this is where we need to be training you. This trans-theoretical model, stages of change, are subcategories to all that. So, for example, like you could have a friend that you played in college with who plays professional baseball, like right-handed pitcher, right? And he throws maybe a 92, 94 mile an hour two-seamer, right?
With good sync.
With good sync. At some point, he didn't know he had to change that, right? Or this concept of when people start analyzing pitches and spin rate and all that kind of stuff. You're going through a stages of change model that at one point you didn't even know that your curveball's too flat or that your fastball's too flat.
Sure.
So you were in that pre-contemplation phase.
Yeah.
And from that stage, you go, all right, someone's giving you this idea of, hey, we got a lot to work with here.
Sure.
Right? So
I actually do have an athlete that finished the professional season, moved out here, and is going to work at this. And what I said is we're going to break down the offseason into two phases. So most people think of their offseason as preparation for spring training. And I've worked with a lot of professional players, and that's the mentality. I'm going to rest, and then, all right, we need to train for 2 months, get ready for spring training, feel good going into spring training, perform all the skills that I need to perform, and then let's go into the season. It's a marathon. And let's try to maintain that as long as possible. Well, this athlete's got a lot of skill and a lot of ability and didn't quite perform the way that he wanted to at the end of the season. Some of those things that he worked in the previous offseason weren't able to last during the entirety of the season. So what I said is, hey, we're going to take the first 10 weeks. We're going to hit the ground running. This is going to be focused on all the adjustments that need to be made. Okay, so we're going to identify the problems, whether they're biomechanically, whether they're mentally, whether they're physically. And we're going to identify all the problems. We're going to get to work on all those problems. Then we're going to take a little break. We're going to give you a week. And then after that week, then we're going to say, all right, we're preparing for spring training. And we're going to build you back up. So we're almost overhauling throwing right now. We're overhauling training. Very intense. A lot of changes happening with that athlete. And then we're going to give them a little rest. And then we're going to prepare. So this was kind of the pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, and fast have moved into the action, right? The minor league season was over 4 weeks ago. So we've moved fast into the action step. But then we're going to kind of reassess and then go back to the pre-contemplation of the fact that, hey, this is what we kind of need to do to prepare for spring training. All right, how do we go about it? Okay, let's prepare for that. Let's label it. Okay, now let's take action on it. And then the season is going to be about the next one that you're going to talk about, which is maintenance.
Yeah, maintenance. I'll talk about maintenance, then I want to hit on a point that you were talking about before. But with maintenance, it's really important that during the maintenance is when you're sustaining these changes and resisting things that cause you to relapse, right? So you're talking about your friend that you're out here training. Maybe part of this entire process for him is understanding that he's going to be in pre-contemplation probably more often than he's going to want to be in pre-contemplation, and that it's okay, and having acceptance over that, and that he's going to go from pre-contemplation and go all through these phases, whether it's through throwing program every day or it's through training of some sort, and that what he's doing is going through these steps to actually make the appropriate change that he needs to. And once he gets to that stage, it sounds like at the end of his season, he had a little bit of an issue with the maintenance and how he can do that. And that might be a process you guys hit on of like, we're in action phase right now. Let's teach the body to be in action phase with all these addressing issues that we've addressed at the very beginning. And then now we're going to learn how we can stay, consistent with it.
How we can maintain it.
Right, how we can maintain it. So that's the fifth stage, and the last stage is it's called the termination stage, when you don't have to worry about this. We've talked about this off camera. I don't necessarily know or agree with if anyone ever gets to termination stage.
Unless they're terminated.
I guess that's the model you can use. But I like to think of as we're always in maintenance stage. We're always addressing boundaries that we can to keep us in that stage, to always never go back, and we're never done with an issue completely. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah. So those are the 6 stages. Do you have anything on those last couple of stages, maintenance and
reiterated? If someone's taking notes: pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, termination.
Correct.
Very good. I read my notes.
Yeah, you did. Do you want to go through how we would coach someone? So
how you coach a coach for that?
Yeah, let's coach a coach for that.
Okay, so first off, Andrew uses the technical terms because he's a beast and he's smart and he knows them. But you don't have to think of them in those terms. You could think of it in concepts. So as a coach, you're always identifying what problems are, and then you're typically educating people that they have a problem, and then you're trying to coach them towards it. And then that's the tricky part, coaching them towards it. So a lot of people want to go right to that action step, right? So if you rewind this 12 minutes, probably 10 minutes, you're going to hear that, hey, when someone walks in the room with us, what do we first do, Andrew? If they're going to train with me, what do I first do with them?
You sit down and have a conversation.
I talk with them. That would be considered the preparation stage in this model. Having a conversation, understanding who the person is very, very important. And I tried to hammer that home, actually. I'm working with a sports agency. They got a lot of players, professional players, high level, really good, like MVPs, really good players. And my job is to train these guys this offseason. And they're, I can just tell from dialogue with the people who run this company that they just see it as like, you're just going to show up and train them. Like they're going to work out. Like you're going to get them stronger and faster and more athletic. And yeah, that's going to happen. But you got to understand, and they're on the same page as me now because we've had a lot of conversations about this. But I said, my most important thing is that I converse with your guys, because my secret sauce, I have good training models and I know my stuff and I'm going to help people. But my secret sauce is knowing what that individual needs to either enhance them or strengthen their weakest link. That's the difference, is understanding what that person needs. Because if you just want a training program, you can hire anybody. There's plenty of training programs. You could Google it. But having a technician or a professional that really understands what that individual needs is really important. Because as specific as cars are, you don't go to a Ford dealership to take care of your Ferrari, right? As specific as those two things are, humans are way more complex. And so why would you just go to any technician to support a problem? Because a random program isn't going to suffice for an individual. So maybe some of the movements and the techniques and all the principles are going to overlay across all, right? We need an engine, we need some motor oil, we need gasoline to make it go. But it's what does that person need in order to create their peak performance? And that's the difference. So I told him, I said, look, I don't care how many people it is. You need to dedicate the time so that I can talk to them. that's going to make me have a good product for you is if I know who I'm working with.
100%. I think what you're hitting on is like using the car example. Like there's different stages of building a car. Know what stage that car needs to be built in, right? Like it's the same thing if you're working with an athlete or if you're just coaching anybody in general, understanding the stage that they're possibly in and meeting them there. You have to meet the athlete there. You have to meet the person that you're coaching there, or else you're skipping stages and there's miscommunication there. Levels of trust are going to be gone, and it's a bad model. So understanding these, like if you're an athlete and you're listening to this, it's real important. Do a little like self-analysis with yourself. Journal a little bit. Figure out where you're at with certain goals that you want to achieve, and figure out what part of this stage of this model that you're in, and understanding the steps and tools that we're giving you on how to acknowledge where you're at, as well as get to the next state.
And a simple step, if you're a coach, where you can kind of quiz yourself, and I'm going to do this to myself now, is kind of ask yourself, like, what do I know about this guy? What do I know about that athlete? Do I know his brother's name? Do I know his parents? Do I know what school he goes to? Like just random things about the person that just shows you're invested in the individual. Like it might not have anything to do with their performance or their sport, but just test yourself and say, am I really astute to who that person is? Because that will help you really understand how you can help them get better, because you have a full understanding of who that person is. So if you're a coach, obviously, like, we were joking about it at the beginning, but like the title of the book is Develop the Human Within the Athlete. And that is part of the human element that it makes you a difference maker. Like when athletes will go play for coaches and they go, oh man, that guy really changed my life. And he showed up at my wedding. That has nothing to do with the X's and O's or the training programs. That has everything to do with how you impacted them. And that will actually make you better. Help them perform better. So I know it's a lot, but I think it's really important that if you're a coach, you invest in that human.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I want to hit on one last point, and we can wrap it up. If you're an athlete and you're listening to this, have some grace within this process. I don't want you to sit there and get upset at you're not at the action phase or whatever stage you want to be in. And it's also okay to go from action to pre-contemplation. There'd been many times in my pro career where I was working on a specific pitch, and I would consider myself in the action phase, and then the next day I would go to try to throw that pitch, and then for some reason I had completely lost any concept of what I was doing. Pitch wasn't working. I don't know. It frustrated me, right? But I'm frustrated that I'm not in the action phase and it's not working, and I would put myself in pre-contemplation, by myself. I would do it to myself. And so it's okay to have acceptance that these things are interchangeable and that it's not a linear process. It's not 1 + 2 = 3. It's going to be bouncing around. So to understand where you're at and have some acceptance of where you're at, and also understand and listen to this podcast many times on what you can do to get yourself into that next stage. And a lot of it is reaching out a helping hand. If you're out of the pre-contemplation and you got someone in your life that's trying to help you change and you're starting to weigh it out in the contemplation phase, hey, it's okay to lean on somebody for a little bit. It's okay to write a pros and cons list, and from that stage, get to the next stage. And it's a process. It could be 3 months, 6 months, a year. It's okay.
Yeah.
Just have some grace within the process, but just know that it's a process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, give yourself grace. It's beautiful. Awesome. Well, that's a wrap.
See you guys.
Bye.